Thank you, Mr. President, and let me just initially, while Senator Vitter's still on the floor here, just thank him so much. He was a great partner in terms of working on this piece of legislation thoroughly through the process over 3 years. We met, I think, about 3 years ago and had a dinner and decided after Frank Lautenberg had died that we would, after he died and he'd done a lot of work on the bill, that we'd pick it up and make it happen. And he's been a man of his word, and it's been a real pleasure working with him. And let me just say about Chairman Inhofe also. What they say in the Senate is if you have a strong chairman, you can get a bill done. And he has been remarkable in terms of his strength and his perseverance in terms of moving this bill. And so we're at a very, very historic point today, and I think I would call it a historic moment. And I thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you. I've enjoyed working with you when I was on the committee, and I am going to enjoy working with you in the future, Chairman Inhofe, in terms of many other issues that come before us in the Senate. I don't have any doubt this is a historic moment. Several years and Congress is in the making, and for the first time in 40 years, the United States of America will have a chemical safety program that works, that protects our families from dangerous chemicals in their daily lives. Mr. President, this is significant. Most Americans believe that when they buy a product at the hardware store or the grocery store, that product has been tested and determined to be safe. But that isn't the case. Americans are exposed to hundreds of chemicals from household items. We carry them around with us in our bodies, and even before we are born. Some are known as carcinogens, others as highly toxic. But we don't know the full extent of how they affect us because they've never been tested. When this bill becomes law, there will finally be a cop on the beat. Today, under the old TSCA, reviewing chemicals is discretionary. When this bill is law, the EPA will be required to methodically review all existing chemicals for safety, starting with the worst offenders. Today, the old law requires that the EPA consider the cost and benefits of regulation when studying the safety of chemicals. Very soon, EPA will have to consider only the health and environmental impacts of a chemical. And if they demonstrate a risk, EPA will have to regulate. And very soon, it will be enshrined in the law that the EPA must protect the most vulnerable people: pregnant women, infants, the elderly, and chemical workers. Today, the old TSCA puts burdensome testing requirements on the EPA. To test a chemical, the EPA has to show a chemical poses a potential risk, and then it has to go through a long rulemaking process. Very soon, EPA will have authority to order testing without those hurdles. Today, the old TSCA allows new chemicals to go to market without any real review, an average of 750 a year. Very soon, the EPA will be required to determine that all chemicals are safe before they go to the market. Today, the old TSCA allows companies to hide information about their product, claiming it as confidential business information, even in an emergency. Very soon, we will ensure that companies can no longer hide this vital information. States, medical professionals, and the public will have access to the information they need to keep communities safe. And businesses will have to justify when they keep information confidential. And that right will expire after 10 years. Today, the old TSCA underfunds the EPA, so it doesn't have the resources to do its job. Very soon, there will be dedicated funding, a dedicated funding stream for TSCA. It will require industry to pay its share, $25 million a year. In addition, this new law will ensure victims can get access to the courts if they are hurt. It will revolutionize unnecessary testing on animals, and it will ensure that states can continue to take strong action on dangerous chemicals. Mr. President, the Senate is about to pass this legislation. It's going to the President, and he will sign it. Over the past several days, I've gotten the same question over and over again. What made this legislation different? Why was the agreement possible when other bills stalled? And I've thought about it quite a bit. It isn't that the bill was simple. This was one of the most complex environmental pieces of legislation around. It certainly wasn't a lack of controversy. This process almost fell apart many times. And it certainly wasn't a lack of interest from stakeholders. Many groups were involved, all with strong and passionate views, and some with deep distrust. We faced countless obstacles, but Mr. President, I think what made this possible was the commitment and the willpower by everyone involved to see good legislation through and endure the slings and the arrows. And I want to say a heartfelt thank you to everyone involved. I remember having dinner with Senator Vitter one evening early on when I was trying to decide whether I would take up Frank Lautenberg's work on this bill. There was already plenty of controversy and concern about the bill. Senator Vitter and I were not used to working with each other. In fact, we have almost always been on opposite sides. But I left dinner with the feeling that Senator Vitter was committed, he wanted to see this process through, and was willing to do what it would take. For 3 years, I never doubted that. Both of us took more than a little heat. We both had to push hard, get important groups to the table, and make sure that they stayed at the table. So I want to thank Senator Vitter. He's been a true partner in this process for me. There are many others to thank, and I will, but before I do that, I want to say a few words about this bill's namesake. Frank Lautenberg was a champion for public health and a dogged, determined leader for TSCA reform. He cared so much for his children and grandchildren. He wanted to leave a better, healthier, safer environment for them. And he always said that TSCA reform would save more lives than anything he ever worked on. This is a bittersweet moment for all of us because Frank isn't here to see this happen. But I have faith that he's watching us and he's cheering us on. His wife, Bonnie, has been here, working as the 101st Senator. She has been a force, an inspiration, keeping us going, pushing us when we needed it. She helped us fulfill Frank's vision. In the beginning, we thought the bill might not ever get introduced in the Senate. We entered this Congress after the Republicans took the majority. Many felt strong environmental legislation was impossible. They urged us to wait. But many of us felt that 40 years was already too long to wait. We knew we could do it and make it better and get it passed. Senator Carper was one of those key members on the Environment Committee. He gave us legs to get out of the gate. He and Senators Manchin and Coons were among our original co-sponsors. They recognized that we had a great opportunity before us, and I want to thank them all. Mr. President, they say that in order to get things done in Washington, you need a good, strong chairman, and Chairman Inhofe fits that description. I want to thank Chairman Inhofe and especially his staff, Ryan Jackson and Dimitri Karakotis. Chairman Inhofe's team was instrumental in moving things forward and worked with me to ensure we built the broadest possible support. They knew that with broad support, you could do better than get it out of committee. We could get it across the finish line. There are days when we all feel discouraged by gridlock here in Washington, but Chairman Inhofe and Senator Vitter rose above that. They saw the value in working together across party and across House and Senate. Senators Booker, Merkley, and Whitehouse all understood we could work together. I want to thank them, too, for sticking with this bill, working through differences. As a result of their efforts, the bill gives states stronger protections, and it helps reduce unnecessary testing on animals. And it includes a number of other improvements. Their staff, Adam Zipkin, Adrian Devney, and Emily Enderle, among others, were key. A strong bipartisan vote of 15-5 out of the committee set us up for action on the floor. As many of you know, floor time is valuable and hard to come by and subject to non-pertinent issues. We needed to work to ensure the broadest possible support. And we did that with Senators Durbin and Markey, our 59th and 60th co-sponsors of our legislation, and I want to thank them and their staff members, Jasmine Hunt and Michael Friedhoff, for their important work to improve key aspects of the federal program, like fees and implementation dates, and to ensure that we could pass this bill through the Senate.
Senator, time's expired.
Is my time up, Mr. President?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much. And let me just say, I'm going to stay over. I know the two senators, I want to thank them. I'm going to stay with Senator Inhofe here and thank additional people because I think it's that important. But we have this time agreement. We need to move on. And so I'm going to yield to Senator Markey for 5 minutes, and then we're going to Senator Whitehouse for 5 minutes. Chairman Inhofe, I just want to state again, the bipartisanship you showed was incredible, and it showed what a significant accomplishment we could have. And I also want to thank so much Senator McCain for allowing us to fit a little slice here in the middle of this very, very important bill, the NDAA, which I know he works on all year long. It does a terrific job, and he allowed us to come in. I told him, because he knew my Uncle Mo Udall, they served together in the House, and I said, I hope you'll do this and do it for Mo, and he just got a great big smile on his face because he spent so much time.
Would the senator yield?
Yes,
one moment?
yes, I will yield.
I just wanted you to know I saved one of the best to the last, and that's Alex Harrigot. Neglected to mention him.
Of course, Alex. Thank you. Thank you. You know, when the House and the Senate, I would just ask to use enough time here to just get through my thank yous. Ask consent for that. The House and the Senate passed bills, and we didn't actually go through a conference committee, but we really worked hard on those differences from late December through just a few weeks ago. We faced challenges working out a final agreement with the House. We had two very different bills. Both had broad bipartisan support, but they took very different paths to fix our broken chemical safety program. But we worked through those issues too, and through this, although this was not a formal conference, it was a true bicameral process with a lot of give and take. To that end, I want to ensure that the record reflects a number of views that I and some of my colleagues have about the final product. We are not filing a traditional conference report, but Senators Boxer, Markley, Merkley, and I have prepared a document to enshrine the views we have on the compromise language. That will be added to the record for posterity on our final product, and I would ask consent that that be printed into the record.
Without objection.
And I want to thank all of our Senate and House colleagues who were instrumental in pulling this together. Again, Chairman Inhofe was a driving force, and Senators Vitter, Crapo, and Capito, and Senators Merkley, Markey, and Boxer. Throughout this entire process, Ranking Member Boxer and I didn't always agree, but we are of the same party, but we also have different opinions about the most important aspects of this legislation. But I want to say I sincerely appreciate her work and advocacy, especially on state preemption. She's a force, all of my colleagues know that, and she worked hard to improve this bill. The legislative process is an important one, and I believe it played out to a good resolution. I also want to thank her and her staff, Bettina Portier and Jason Albritton, for their dedication and work. And then my staff members, who have been mentioned here several times, were crucial. Jonathan Black, Andrew Wallace, Mike Collins, Bianca Ortiz, Wertheim, and all my staff who over these 3 years kicked in and helped out when the heavy burden was on the folks that I had mentioned. On the House side, I want to thank Chairman Fred Upton, the subcommittee chairman John Shimkus, and of course Leader Pelosi, Democrat Whip Hoyer, Ranking Member Pallone, and Representatives DeGette and Green. They all worked tirelessly to advocate for reform. And I'd like to mention their staff members as well. Republican staff Dave McCarthy, Jerry Corey, Tina Richardson, Chris Sarley, and the Democratic staff, Rick Kessler, Jackie Cohen, Thule Wright, Gene Fruki, and especially Mary Frances Repko with Representative Hoyer's office, and Eleanor Bastian and Sergio Espinosa from Representatives DeGette and Green's office. All these staff and so many more worked tirelessly to advocate for their members and shape and move this complex and important legislation. and of course my own staff and many more who I did not mention, many Senate and House staff who have come and gone over the long process, but played very important roles. There are too many to try and list here, but let me say thanks to the good folks at the House and Senate Legislative Council offices. Throughout this process, we used both offices a tremendous amount and appreciated their patience and good work, especially Michelle Johnson-Weeder, Maureen Contraini, Deanna Edwards, and at the Senate Legislative Council. A law like this takes so much work from all these offices and staff, and I know that my own staff could not have possibly done it without the expertise and advice of the experts at the Environmental Protection Agency. Of course, Administrator Gina McCarthy and her top assistant, Administrator Jim Jones, deserve a great deal of gratitude for all they did to help support our efforts and ensure we got it right. And many congressional liaisons, program officers, and lawyers from the General Counsel's office. My staff and others spent many evenings and weekends with EPA experts on calls to make sure we were getting the text right. Here are just a few. Wendy Cleland Hammett, Ryan Wallace, Priscilla Flattery, Kevin McLean, Brian Grant, Dave Burrell, Laura Vaught, Nicole DeStefano, Seven Eric Kaiser, Tristan Brown, Ryan Schmidt, Don Sadowski, and Scott Sherlock. And I want to thank them all and put them on alert. The real job for the EPA is only beginning. And I'm about finished here, Senator Markey. Yeah.
Just one second, and I just wanted to reinforce what you just said. On the House side, Fred Upton, Frank Pallone, Nancy Pelosi, and Steny Hoyer, that incredible staff, Mary Frances Refko over there, just indispensable. That's why it happened. It was bipartisan, bicameral. I thank the gentleman for yielding.
Thank you, Senator Markey. And you know, because you've served so many years, how important it is to have good staff. And I wanted to just make sure that we get them all thanked here. But thank you very much, and I appreciate that. Implementation of this law is going to be extremely important. As the ranking member on the Appropriations Committee with jurisdiction over EPA, I will remain very involved in ensuring that this law gets implemented well. And finally, I also want to recognize all the great advocates for reform who pushed Congress to act and kept pushing until we did act. Of course, I need to start by thanking the Environmental Defense Fund, in particular Fred Krupp and his staff, Richard Dennison, Joanna Slaney, and Jack Pratt. Let me also thank Dr. Lynn Goldman, the Dean of Public Health at George Washington University, and the good advocates at Moms Clean Air Force, the Humane Society, the National Wildlife Federation, the March of Dimes, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, the Building Trades, the American Association of Justice, and so many others. They reminded us that we were working for reform that would improve the lives of countless mothers, fathers, and children. From New Mexico to Michigan, from California to Maine, they reminded us that the American people need a working chemical safety program. I know there are many, many other groups out there in the environmental and public health community that took a different approach to our bill. I understand and appreciate where they were coming from. Groups like Safer Chemicals, Healthy Families, and the Natural Resources Defense Council. They brought passion and conviction to the debate and stood firm on principles. They played a great and important role, and I want to thank them for that. Good legislation takes work. It takes give and take from everyone, including industry groups, the American Chemistry Council, the American Cleaning Institute, and over 100 other members of the American Alliance for Innovation. Thank you for engaging in the process to get this done. Many thousands of Americans have worked for chemical safety reform over the last 4 decades. Thanking you, and I'm thanking you for not giving up. My dad always said, and Senator McCain knew my father, Stuart Udall, get it done, but get it done right. And today I can say that not only did we get it done, but we got it done right. And let's not forget, this is just one step in the process. We must find a way to work collaboratively as we turn to the next step, implementation. Implementation needs to be done and needs to be done right. I look forward to working with all of these members and groups to ensure we have a strong, workable chemical safety program. Thank you, Senator McCain. I'm sorry if this went in longer than you expected, longer than you expected. But I know my Uncle Mo is looking down and saying thank you to you and my father Stuart and all that. The long relationship you've had with the Udall family and the chapters in your books about Mo Udall and that relationship. So thank you so much. And I thank also Ranking Member Jack Reed for his patience here. I know the hour is getting late. Thank you so much. Yield the floor.